Welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melisa Caprio. Do you believe in magic? What if you were told that all you had to do was get a little creative and work a magic spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Here on Postcards to the Universe, we will share manifesting, tips, postcards, creativity, abundance, and prosperity. Here is your host, Melisa Caprio.
Hello, and welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melisa, creating the life you crave. It's Wednesday. I love Wednesdays. How is everyone this week? How are you guys doing? I hope everybody's doing well. I want to thank you for being here with me today, and I have a really exciting show with my guest author, Thiroux Threatt, who I will bring out in a few minutes, and she is going to help us, especially if we are dealing with grief. So just a few things that I like to share before I bring my guest on, what's going on with me. I have been working on my next book. It's been an interesting experience. I'm about halfway finished, and it's going a bit slower than I had hoped because, I think I shared I haven't been feeling great, and I'm still dealing with whatever's going on, so we're still figuring that part out, but I'm okay. And I also realized that I think I need to do some serious editing. At the rate I'm going, because the book's halfway done, this book may be over 100,000 words, and that's a lot. So I can't believe I have that much to say, but I do notice that when I write, I have a tendency to say the same things. I don't know if you guys who are writers do this, the same things a couple of times, but I just write them out differently. So I definitely need to clean that up, and I'm sure that will bring it down. And of course, there's going to be a photograph to go along with each chapter, which is my favorite part because you guys know I'm a photographer who listens to me all the time, and it's been an experience. And speaking of photographs, if you do listen to me each week, you hear me share my Magic Monday message of a manifesting postcard of the week with an affirmation. And this week's affirmation is volunteering broadens me. And I think it's so easy for us to get wrapped up in our own little worlds, thinking, our own little dramas, thinking we know everything and thinking we know how the world works and that our way is the best way. And I believe an amazing way to expand our horizons and open our eyes is by giving to others. And the best way to do that is to volunteer our time and our gifts. And my guest today, she volunteers her experience, time, and energy with people who are suffering and grief. And we can learn so much about other cultures if we take the time to give of ourselves. There's so many awesome, exotic places we can travel in the world and to volunteer. And there are amazing places in our own backyard on this planet, and things that we would never be exposed to unless we go out there and we do some giving and volunteering. And I think there's so much that we can learn if we open ourselves up when we invest our time in giving. And volunteering is giving, and it feels really good to give. Especially this past year, there are so many people who are suffering and hurting, and how can we help? What can we do? How can we serve? I think that's the question we need to be asking ourselves more and more. Like I say, we easily get so wrapped up in our own dramas that we forget that other people may have it much harder than we do. So many people are suffering. So when I created this week's message with this postcard about giving and volunteering, it made me think about how much opportunity is always available to us to grow and expand and learn. Because it's not only good for those who we are helping, but it's good for us and it's good for our souls. And if we did a little more of that, I think the world would look a lot different if we all did a little bit more of giving of ourselves. So that's this week's Magic Monday message. And if you want to know what I'm talking about and have a visual to see the Magic Monday message, go to my website, postcardstotheuniverse.com, or you can go to any of my social media platforms because I share it across all the social media platforms that I'm on, which is basically all of them. And if you're interested in people's journeys of transformation and inspiration and manifesting, please check out my book, Postcards to the Universe, Harness the Universe's Power and Manifest Your Dreams. And you can find that on any of the online bookstores at the moment. And I would love it if you guys who are on Facebook like to participate in inspirational stories. You can join my Facebook public group. It's called Postcards of Love. And we share nothing but inspirational, beautiful pictures, inspirational stories, funny stories, lots of animal stuff, good animal stuff though, because I only like to see the good animal stuff. So yeah, come on by. And I recently created a YouTube channel. So I'm adding this radio show to that when I get the recording, so you can listen to me there on YouTube and subscribe. That would be great. Okay, so next week I have Stephen G. Post, PhD, who is a best-selling author. Of his book is called God and Love on Route 80, The Hidden Mystery of Human Connectedness, a remarkable true story of faith, love, and destiny for everyone on a spiritual journey. Having hitchhiked along Route 80 from Pennsylvania to San Francisco, based on a premonition, a 17-year-old boy, Stephen G. Post, saw a youth leaning over a ledge at the Golden Gate Bridge, ready to end it all. Curiously, this was not his first encounter with the stranger in San Francisco. So this should be a really interesting story. So join me next week to hear Stephen. But to talk with my guest today, who I'm super excited about, Emily Thiroux Threatt is an author of and lecturer with extensive personal experience in the grieving process. After coping with the deaths of her two husbands, father, mother, aunts, uncles, and many friends, she has learned to face life with love, optimism, and joy. In turn, she created a unique program called Writing Your Way Through Grief to help others through the grieving process. And her book, which I just finished last night, which is great. Her book, Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief, a comprehensive guide to reclaiming and cultivating joy and carrying on in the face of loss, will provide guidance for navigating the downs and ups of that unfamiliar territory. Emily conducts workshops, speaking engagements, and retreats. And if you want to find out more about Emily, you can go to her website, which is lovingandlivingyourwaythroughgrief.com. Welcome, Emily. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm just doing great.
Good. Well, that's good. Emily's in Hawaii, right? You're in Hawaii?
Yes, I'm on Maui.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'm jealous. How's the weather over there?
It's absolutely gorgeous.
Of course it is. Of course. I don't think you guys get as hot as we do down here in South Florida.
No.
Yeah.
No, we don't.
Hawaii is on my bucket list. Haven't gotten there yet, but I will get there one day. So I want you to share a little bit about your background and what, inspired you to write your book.
Okay. Well, as you said, I've lost two husbands. The first one, Jacques, I was married to for 22 years, and he was ill for about 2 years before he died, and it was really, really hard for me when he died with trying to figure out what to do, and there were lots of reasons for it, but it was a real challenge. And I never thought I'd get married again, but I met someone who was just wonderful, and we fell in love and ended up getting married. And then he was healthy when I married him, but he ended up dying from the same thing that Jacques did after 2 years of being very ill. And when he died, when we were together, we just had this marvelous relationship of living in the moment and just focusing on each other and what's good and right, not worrying about the past, not worrying about the future, but just enjoying what was. So when he died, I thought, I just can't go through the same thing that I went through before. I've got to figure out a way to navigate this grieving process that's going to be healthy and healing for me. And it took me a while. I had that initial grief almost breakdown that you have for at least a month before you come out of the fog in your brain and can even see life again. But then I've been a writing instructor at the university for over 30 years, and so I turned to writing because that's like my comfort place. And the more I wrote, the better I felt. And then one of my husband's dear friends, Chappie, he was like 20 years younger than my husband. He called my husband Dad, and he was perfectly healthy, and we were good friends with their family when we lived on the mainland, and they lived close by, and he just dropped dead without any warning. And I was concerned about his wife, so I immediately sent her everything that I could think of about what she needed to worry about at that moment and what she didn't need to worry about, because I know she was totally unprepared. Nobody expects any friend, husband, anybody to die way before their time. Sure. And she told me later that was just invaluable to her because nobody else talked to her about something like that. So I thought, I've got to do more. So I decided I'd be in contact with her every week for the first year. And I take pictures on Hawaii all the time because I'm not an official photographer, but I love how it looks over here, and I'm always seeing beautiful things to take pictures of. So I took those pictures and made 52 different cards with a different picture on the front of each of them. And then I thought, what am I going to say in there? So I sat down and wrote. It only took me like 2 days to write the contents for 52 cards of different things to think about and do and focus on through that first year. Providing her support and comfort through the whole thing. And she was really appreciating those. And it came to me that as a writer, I had an outline for a book. So I found an agent and found a publisher, and the book came out in January.
Congratulations on the book, by the way. And it's very, very helpful. I am not actively in, mourning the loss of anyone. I have lost people and grieved. And as I was reading your book, I was like, wow, this would really have been very helpful to me while I was in it, really feeling it. Because what I really liked about your book was the way you lay out the chapters, and you at the end of each chapter, you have tips for us, readers who are going through it, of things that we can do that may help ease our grief. You're never in the book talking about how your grief you should be through your grief, you should be feeling a certain way. Everything that you're offering us are just simple tools and tips that can maybe help ease the pain of our grief and help us deal while we're going through it, which is what I really appreciated about how you wrote out the book.
Oh, thank you. That was very important to me, to be able to do something constructive. I noticed when, especially after Jacques died, I just couldn't find support anywhere. The online wasn't that prominent at that time, and I would try to read books, and they were all so sad, and I tried a group, and it was so sad, and everybody was crying, and I'm sure it met the needs from some people, but I needed something to lighten me up, to bring some joy, essentially, into my life, instead of being constantly sad. So it's been kind of my mission to figure out ways to have people kind of navigate through their grief of, it's not only someone dying, but of loss in general. And in this last year in particular, we've all been dealing with some form of loss. And I found when you actively do something, like you were saying, that at the end of each chapter, there's something to do, then you can help create for yourself a more pleasant life, a more comforting life, so that you're not always deep in the throes of grief.
Yeah, I love what you did for your friend, though, and his wife, that you took of course, the photos and made cards and wrote out 52. And you sent her one each week? Is that what you did?
Yes, every
made
week.
That was God, that's so nice of you. And I'm sure she found that so comforting, because maybe even if she had nothing to look forward to she knew your card was coming. You know what I'm saying? So it was something, even if it's something small. And I really wanted to ask you, okay, so you said both of your husbands died of the same illness, and they were both sick for 2 years. Did you, with your second husband, after you had already been through this, did you find yourself very angry? Because did you ever say to yourself, I can't believe this is happening to me again? Like, I already went through this. Like, why is this happening to me again? Did you do that?
I could see how that could happen, but I can honestly say I really didn't. What I did discover was the things that I learned through caring for Jacques were things that could help me with helping Ron, because I had experienced so much of it already. I could say, okay, now this is what we need to be concerned about, what we don't need to be concerned about, what we need to focus on. And I had found ways to provide comfort that through caring for Jacques that I could just do for Ron without having to figure out something that I already knew from experience.
Wow, that's pretty incredible, because I know a lot of people would say this shouldn't, you always think like you're exempt if something terrible happens, that can't happen again, right? And that's not the way life is. So the fact that you went into it knowing, I have a lot of tools now that I can do that can help me and this person I love through this process. So before we get into more stuff, because we're just coming up at the 20-minute mark now, so why don't we take our break here? So everyone stay tuned, and I'll be back in 2 minutes with Emily.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hi, I'm Melisa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, Creating the Life You Crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on OMTimes Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, Creating the Life You Crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
The rainbow is God's promise of hope for you and me. And though the clouds hang heavy and the sun we cannot see, we know above the dark clouds that fill the stormy sky, hope's rainbow will come shining through when the clouds have drifted by. Teresa Caprio is the president and founder of Rainbow Guardian Inc., a nonprofit 501c3 serving the intellectually challenged/developmentally disabled, including autism. Teresa started the foundation in 1995 so she could help make a better life for her intellectually challenged daughter. Her dream is that the Rainbow Guardian will provide the necessary tools and education to help the public understand the special needs population, because it's often discarded in mainstream society. To find out more or make a donation in support, please go to www.rainbowguardian.org. Rainbow Guardian's special mission is to see these unique people live a happy, full life and have a future of liberty and equality.
Welcome back. So I have author Emily Thiroux Threatt on with her book, Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief, a comprehensive guide to reclaiming and cultivating joy and carrying on in the face of loss. So right before the break, I was asking you about your experience, because obviously you went through a very similar experience with both of your husbands. And how long ago was... but actually both of them. What was the year of your first husband, Jacques, and then your second husband?
Jacques died in 2006, and Ron died in 2017.
Okay, so 2017 wasn't very long ago. And you moved with your second husband, Ron, to Hawaii, and then you've stayed there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So... Did you say to yourself, okay, I started writing these, right? You realized that you had an outline for your book when your friend's husband unexpectedly passed away. And did you think, I have gone through so much of this. I have so much experience. I know that my book is going to help people? Like, did this make you get into, I don't want to say the grief business because it's terrible to say it like that, but I know you do workshops and you do a lot of things to help people out. So did you think, like, I have to share this with others because of my own experiences?
Yes, I should
okay.
say.
Okay. Yeah, like the grief business is a terrible expression because I don't mean it like that, but I don't know what other word, like the grief experience, I should say. You're sharing the experience. Okay.
Yeah, the experience, probably. Yeah. I found after Ron died that I had been... I've been teaching forever. I was still teaching online. I was retired from the university where I was teaching, but I could still teach online, which I could do in Hawaii as easy as I could in California. So I had that in common. But I was only doing that part-time when they needed me, and so it wasn't like my filling up my life. So what I became focused on as I was dealing with Ron's passing was, okay, I kind of don't have a life's purpose anymore. I used to be focused on what I was doing and felt I did, so I felt like I really needed to find what my life's purpose was. And I discovered through writing those cards that I really had maybe a gift, so to speak, based on my experiences of ways that I could help people be happy, help people deal with what they were dealing with, have them feel loved and supported in a way that could allow them to love and support other people too. And I found that helping of the people who were dealing with any kind of loss was now my life's purpose. So everything that I've done now is focused around that in one way or another. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. And I can see that too in the way that you laid it out in your chapters. In some of your chapters, you start off with, after the introduction, basically your first chapter is talking about wrapping yourself in love, which I thought was really good, because I think that when you lose somebody that you love, you feel like the love is gone. Even though the love isn't gone, it's just transformed, and the person, the physical person is gone, but the love isn't gone.
That's right. That's right. I have one common question that people ask me when they're really in the throes of grief is, how long is this going to last? How long am I going to grieve? And my answer actually is, as long as you still love the person that's gone, because that love stays there with you always. But it doesn't have to. We think of grief as a negative thing, as something that's down and not comfortable in some place you don't want to be, but it can develop into something better, something where you focus on the love. And if you start to get sad, you can think back and remember how wonderful the love was when you were physically together, and how you know that love still exists, and how you love yourself in the process, because self-love is really, really important when you're dealing with loss.
Yeah, I imagine it is. And I imagine a lot of people are hard on themselves, because especially if they've maybe going through it for a while, they may say to themselves, all right, you need to get over it already. And I don't think that's beneficial. You're not helping yourself by getting angry at yourself for not being through it, right? Like, that doesn't help you. What did you find personally that was the hardest part of the grieving process for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I think missing both of them when they were gone. Yeah. It was really, I'd wake up in the morning and reach over to touch them in bed, and they weren't there. The actual physical missing was probably the hardest thing to deal with. Yeah,
I think that makes sense. That makes sense. And I remember in your book you were talking about, I don't remember which relationship it was, but I do remember you saying that you couldn't sleep in your bed. I think it was your second husband. I think it was Ron. You couldn't sleep in your bed at first because you and he created such a sanctuary there, so you had to stay on the couch. And that wasn't benefiting you because you weren't sleeping well, which makes you feel worse. Yeah. So how did you talk yourself back into getting back into that and going back into your bedroom after that?
Well, it was actually kind of thinking about conversations that I'd had with Ron. And he would tell me, like, if there was something that I was doing or thinking about that wasn't really right for me, he would say, how does that serve you? How does it serve you to think that way or to do that? And it just, one night when I was really struggling on the couch, I could just hear him say to me, how does it serve you to be sleeping out here on the couch? And I thought, that's absolutely right. This isn't doing me any good. It's not doing anybody else any good. It doesn't make any kind of point. There's not a purpose in it. And so I came back to bed and was okay. And I was surprised that I was comfortable in bed and could sleep okay. And I still am on my side of the bed. I don't sleep on his side of the bed. I just kind of, that's a habit, I guess, that I still have.
Yeah,
but
sure.
That's how that worked out.
Sure. I like that. But how is this serving you is a good question to ask yourself about a lot of things when,
it's a
when
really
you're
good
going
question.
It really is. How is this serving me, And usually you'll find out it's not serving me at all. You talk about, you go through the stages of grief in one of the chapters, and you lay it out, the anger, and I'll let you share. What are the stages? Because you mentioned that there were more than the standard, what is it, Elizabeth, what's her name? Elizabeth, I can never say her name.
Kubler-Ross.
Kubler-Ross, right.
Kubler-Ross.
And the 5 stages of grief. But you mentioned that there were, that there are actually more than just the 5. So can you share a little bit about, for people who are grieving right now and wherever they're at, what they may be going through?
I kind of like to talk about this because Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote the 5 stages of dying, not of grief.
Okay.
And I think people don't usually realize that. They've just kind of adopted it as a grief thing.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. So I think I agree with you. Yeah, I just thought it was always about grief. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it kind of makes a difference when you look at what the stages would be, and then people since she published that book have come out with, well, this is the 6th stage, or there are 9 stages, or whatever it is. And what I encourage people to do is not worry about the stages, because what happens is people will go, okay, I'm in this stage now. How long am I going to be in this stage? And they don't consider everything else that's going on. And I don't think it helps you to think that you have to go through each of the stages. And people actually, I've seen written about that people think they have to go through the 5 stages in the order that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote them. And that's just not helpful. So I think my biggest encouragement is to not worry about stages and to recognize that you're going to feel how you feel and you need to deal with that at the time instead of worrying about if you're at the right spot in the process or if you're doing it right. That's one thing that just kind of blows me away when people are asking me about if they're grieving the correct way.
Right.
And
yeah. Think about that. That's interesting.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what the stages encourage, is that there's a specific process, and if you don't do it that way, then you're a failure or that you're not doing it right.
Yeah, and I know people cycle back. You may be sad, and then you may go into anger, and then you may go back to sadness. So, I know it's not there's no formula. I know people, when we write stuff down, we as authors, we have to giving our information, but there's really no formula. You have to do what works for you, and whatever that is the right answer for you. I mean, unless you're hurting yourself and hurting others, obviously, that's, the only thing you don't want to do. You talk about the dealing with the loneliness, and I'm assuming that's a very big issue when you're grieving somebody who passed away. That goes along with the missing. How did you deal with the loneliness, and what do you recommend? Or what did you find helpful, I should say?
I found helpful. Well, I can tell you, after Jacques died, loneliness was a really big thing for me. I had a friend who was staying with us and helping me take care of Jacques in his last few months. And then when she left, I really felt alone. And I just didn't know what to do. And I was just kind of miserable. And he died in February, and when December came, I was thinking, I've got to make a New Year's resolution. I've got to do something that's going to help me get past this. And what came to me for my resolution was to accept invitations. And when I first thought of that, I thought, this is nuts. Nobody's inviting me anywhere. Nobody's inviting me to do anything. And I think a lot of that was because most people don't want to deal with or don't know how to deal with somebody who's grieving, and so they just don't. And it leaves people out there kind of hanging by themselves. So once I decided to accept invitations, to just say yes when people suggested something to me, I had the most amazing experiences just keep coming to me. And each one of them allowed me to meet new people, to learn new things, to do community service, to do all kinds of different things that I wouldn't have thought of before. And they didn't all come at once. They came gradually. And whenever I would recognize something as an invitation, I'd say, okay, I'm going to say yes. I don't know where it's going to lead, but I'm going to say yes. And it was amazing. And it's what really opened me up again.
Yeah, I love that chapter, actually, because I remember you said in the book, you're like, no, I wasn't getting invitations to go anywhere. And then as soon as and that's what happens when I talk about manifestation, you made an energetic shift. You said, I'm going to start accepting invitations. I'm going to say yes. And so the universe heard you, and it said, okay, she's ready. Let's give them to her. And then you talked about, you had this incredible year, and you traveled and you met so many people. And so I was like, yeah, that's a very empowering chapter. When I was reading it, I was thinking that for people who are going through stuff. And obviously, you have to get to that point. You have to be ready, Yes. Does it mean right after you lose somebody, you're going to be like, all right, I'm ready to start socializing again. You have to, you talk about cocooning yourself, and you talk about, dealing with the loss and feeling your feelings, which I think let's talk about feeling your feelings, because a lot of people don't like to feel their feelings. And I know somebody specifically who lost his wife, who has avoided it and has kind of forced his children to avoid it too. And I see not such good things because of that, but you can't tell somebody, so what happens when we avoid our feelings?
They don't go away. You can try to hold them down or try to block them out, but they're not going to go away. And eventually, it's either going to bubble over into something that you really don't want it to be, or you're going to have to figure out a way to deal with it. And with me, writing was the way, because if I would start thinking about something and it was just getting overwhelming to me, if I sat down and wrote about it, then it got better and better. And I'll give you one example of dealing with the feelings and this process. When Jacques, when we first realized something was going on with him, he had a heart issue and all of a sudden had to have bypass surgery. And it was sudden. The whole process was really kind of interesting, but the things that we went through was a long story of about 5 days. And when people would ask me something, I'd have to tell them this whole story. And I could see people just start kind of roll their eyes after a while, because it was a long story. And so recognizing that, I started making this story shorter. And finally I got to the point where I could say he had a heart issue, he had bypass surgery, and he's a lot better now. And that was by going through the process of really examining what happened. And so I through that experience, realized that if I'd write about things, I could get the same effect without throwing all of my troubles on anybody who'd listen to me.
Yeah, and as I can see that. And as a writer, that probably was very cathartic for you. We're going to take I don't mean to cut you off, but we are at our second break. So let's take our break here, and then we're going to come back and talk more about this. Stay tuned.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Hi, I'm Melisa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, Creating the Life You Crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on OMTimes Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, Creating the Life You Crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives.
COVID-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Welcome back. So, Emily, I'm just curious, in one of your chapters, you talk about transformation and preparation. And what did you mean by that? 'Cause I thought that was really interesting.
Well, it kind of caught me off guard. I wrote so much.
Sorry. Well, after you lose someone and you're going through your grief and your loneliness and you're going through the stages and you're starting to try to, because you talk about living in the moment and, and then of course guilt comes up because if you're enjoying yourself, then you're feeling guilty because the person who you love is no longer around. So you feel so all that stuff. But then you talk about transformation and preparation. And I was like, that's interesting, I thought, perspective from dealing when you're talking about grief. So I just wanted to see if you could, expand on that a little.
I think a lot of it is getting to know who you really are and where you really want to be, what you really want to do. Because a lot of us don't think about things like that until you're in a position that all of a sudden nothing's the same as it was before. Mm-hmm. And when you can prepare for things like preparing for your loved one's passing, it puts things kind of more in perspective, that it's still going to be a shock when the moment arrives. You're still going to have to go through the grief process and the loss process. But if you have really thought about, okay, this is where I want to be now. This is how I could serve myself now. And I found with me that helping others made all the difference in the world to me, because it could put my situation in perspective. Because I could always, when you're dealing with loss or grief, you always find somebody that is still in the deep throes of whatever it is that happened. And some things are absolutely horrific and usually kind of worse than anything I thought I dealt with. So it helps keep things in perspective. And being able to reach out and help people kind of puts you in a different place in the universe where you're, it can be kind of a guiding light and a support and a friend. And to me, it was a transformative process to get to that point, because I hadn't really thought, I've always done things that served other people, but not on the scale that I'm doing now. I really feel like I'm a different person before, and I can honestly say I'm happier now than I ever was. And that's the last thing I expected to experience after, having two husbands die. Usually when somebody finds out I had two husbands die, they go, oh no, it's bad enough that you have one, but if there's two, how do you survive? How do you go on? And you do survive and go on by taking care of yourself, that self-love we were talking about, and focusing on how your life is transforming, how you're transforming, and how you can be the best person that you can be.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and when I was talking about in the beginning of the show about giving and volunteering, and it's that energy that you said, like you got out of yourself and you got so much. You found a beacon of light when you were helping others. And you weren't just in your own stuff, and you realized, oh my God, there are people out there that it's so, so much worse. And specifically for your book, we're talking about death as grief, but grief doesn't only mean you're grieving if somebody passes away or dies on you. You grieve a relationship. You can grieve, a friendship ending. So all of this, what you talk about, is helpful for people who are grieving no matter what the reasons are they're grieving, you just happen to focus down because you're talking about death specifically in this.
Yeah, that's true. But there are so many, especially with what we've been dealing with the pandemic, the loss of our being able to go where we want to when we want to go there. That's a loss, and it's something that it's a good idea to deal with. And a lot of people lost their jobs or lost their incomes. Some people even lost their homes. All of those things. Or people who have surgery. I know I was speaking to somebody who had breast cancer and had lost her breast. She was grieving for her breast that she no longer had. So there's lots of ways to, are lots of different things to deal with, and all of them are things that you should deal with. Because a lot of times we just don't. We just kind of ignore them and hope they go away. And that just builds up kind of angst, maybe anger. And that's not serving you. That's not helping you.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the questions I had was what you could say to somebody who's listening who is maybe going through major grief over this because of this past year. Maybe they did lose someone to COVID, and everyone is feeling very isolated. It's been a devastating year for a lot of people. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, this would be a good book to have, and maybe do some of the recommendations and some of the things that you give us to do to help ease our feelings of grief and isolation. Yeah, and definitely.
You mentioned something about what you say to somebody else, and that's a really important thing. One of the things that I've heard a lot that isn't helpful is when you judge somebody. In you think you're offering them comfort, but you say, well, I know that he chose not to wear a mask. No wonder he died from COVID. That's not going to help. If you could say instead, gee, I know how much you loved him and you had such wonderful times together. And I remember the time that we did this. That's so much more positive and supportive. And it's, think about that old saying, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
Exactly.
I don't want you to not say anything, but I want you to say something nice.
Yes.
There's always something.
Yes, I know. And I know that, and one that I was just saying this to a friend, we were talking about something, and we were talking about divorce, and it's not helpful just saying, oh, well, half the population gets divorced. It's no big deal. Just get over it. Well, that may be a true statement. 50% of the people get divorced,
but you don't need to say it.
Right, it's not very helpful. Right, that's not very helpful when I'm going through something, So, or, and this is a big one. Oh, it could always be worse, and that is true. But the opposite,
except for that, for that person, this might be the worst.
This might be the worst, and it could always be better. That's the opposite of that. That's what, my new line is. It could always be better. So, it's like, don't. So, I'm glad you mentioned, because we don't know what is appropriate to say. So you can maybe help us. What is the right thing to say if somebody loses a spouse to death, or a child, or a parent, or a friend? Like, what do we say if we want to be there for them?
To be there for them, be absolutely positive, and say something like, I'm here to support you. I'm here to love you and help you, and let me just sit with you. Let me bring you a cup of tea, or let me listen to whatever it is that you have to say. Because listening is one thing that people grieving don't get very much of. Because people are either trying to give them advice or trying to, say, I'm sorry for your loss, and then skip on to the next thing, because that's a real common thing that people say, because they kind of feel like they have to. It may be the only thing they can think of, but they say that, and then they go on to, do you want to go grocery shopping? Or, how about those Dodgers? Something that isn't really pertinent. So speak think about what you would like to hear if you were in that situation. And for instance, I always loved it and still love it when people talk about my husband. They say they remember what a beautiful singing voice Jacques had and how much they loved to listen to him, or they remember the guidance that Ron gave them that helped them create their business and brought so much joy and wonder into their lives. So whatever it is that you choose to say, non-judgmental and be positive, whatever it is, and make it personal to that person and listen to the person that's dealing with loss.
I like that. And and like you said, you want to talk about your husband and the people that you love who passed. A lot of people think like, oh, I don't want to mention it. I don't want them to have to think about it. Like, you're not thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, of course you're thinking about it. If you're in it, you're probably thinking about it the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, and probably dreaming about it. You're always thinking about it. So it's good that you say that. So to talk about the person with the person who's grieving. I remember when my friend lost her mom, she didn't want to talk, but she just loved me being there. And I just stayed with her for a little while. She just loved me being in the house. As simple as, do you want me to make some food? Do you want to order something? Just being there in case was bringing her comfort, even though she didn't really want to do a lot of talking, and I was just there for her. That's what she told me. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
if she's not ready to talk, then I don't feel like you need to force it.
Right.
Because, if they want to talk, by all means, let them talk and actively listen to them. But if they don't want to talk, you can sit there and have a cup of tea together, or watch a movie, or eat some popcorn, or just do something. Just sit, hold her hand, put your arm around her shoulders, do whatever you're comfortable with, that you're both comfortable with. And don't judge her, and don't judge yourself by how you're responding to her.
Yeah.
Or whichever the case may be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very good advice. I want to ask you about, you have some things that you do to help people. You have a group, I think, on Facebook, and you have some workshops and you blog a lot, and you're on other podcasts, and you talk about this a lot. So, what are you offering for people? Or if somebody's in the midst of deep grief right now and they need some help and they want to go somewhere, where should they go to work with you?
One thing you can do is go to my website, and on there there's a contact me link, and you can ask me whatever you want to help you find what it is that you're looking for specifically. I do have 3 different Facebook groups. I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and all that sort of thing. One of the things that I really enjoy is every Saturday morning I do a Writing Together Through Grief Zoom group.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's just an hour long, and we have something different to write on every week, and I'll give them something to write about. They'll take a little time to write, and then we'll share what we wrote and discuss it. And people just love that. It gives them an opportunity to express what they hadn't realized that they need to, or express things in a way they hadn't been able to before, and to get some kind of validation for their experiences. And I really like to do that. That's a great thing for the people involved.
That sounds wonderful. Can anybody join that? Is that easy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So if we wanted to join that, how would we do that? We would just go to your website?
Go to my website, and on the contact me, say I want to join the Zoom Writing Through Your Grief class, and I'll get it to you so that you can do that. I encourage people to read the book and do the practices in the book. That really helps. I love to do retreats. Of course, they've all been virtual lately. That's where I've spoken to. But with those kind of events where we can work together with the people at the retreat on different subjects related to grief, whatever the person or the whoever it is that's putting the retreat on wants to help with. For instance, on Mother's Day, I'm part of a day-long summit that is for celebrating the braveness of mothers who have gone through stillbirth, miscarriage, and infant loss, and validating their motherhood and doing. It's all day different activities, and my activity, of course, is writing through your grief. So I'll be working with them on that day. So there's. I love to do summits and retreats. A really wonderful way to connect with people.
Me too. I can't wait till we could go back to doing this kind of things. Gosh, I can't wait.
In person. At least we can Zoom,
At least we can Zoom. Well, I think what you're doing is so wonderful and how you're helping people. And yeah, she is a great resource. So anybody who's listening right now who is in the midst of deep grief and feels isolated, you can reach out to Emily and she's going to point you at least in the right direction. So if you go to her website, lovingandlivingyourwaythroughgrief.com, you can find out more about Emily. Emily, I want to thank you so much for joining me today and speaking about this. It's just been very, very helpful. Thank you.
No, thank you for letting me.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And thank you, everyone, for listening to Postcards to the Universe with Melisa, creating the life you crave. Wishing everyone a wonderful week filled with joy, abundance, and love. Peace.